so glad you could come talk to me selfishly, because as I've told you, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, who will be 15 soon, as 3 years,
In
and
a week.
in a week. But I also think that this conversation is incredibly important for parents of young kids, like however old your daughters are, because if you have a daughter, because this is a relationship that starts and builds on the things that happen when they're young. Would you say? I'm sure you would
Oh,
agree with that.
absolutely. There's no question. I think it's so important to establish the sort of things that you want to accomplish in terms of your relationship with your daughter when your daughter is very young, and to set
Mm.
the tone for what's going to happen. If you start trying to create a trusting relationship when she's 15, it's going to be that much more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. I mean, at least for me, like I had that, like that was a big driving force for me, was like, I don't want my child to hate me when they're 14 and 15. Like I'd actually like to have like a good relationship with them when they're 14 and 15, because I had so much, I had a lot of strife in my own relationship with more with my father when I was that age. And it was like we had a difficult relationship for many years after that, because of the
Sure.
way he parented me. And I was like, I wanted to avoid that. I know there's going to be separation, and there's definitely like separation, and teenagers are teenagers and they're wacky and weird and a little bit hormonal, definitely hormonal at times. But I feel happy in that we're in a close relationship still. We're talking every day, about all kinds of things. I mean, I feel like that you're right, like that tone of like, I listened to her tell me like these long stories about My Little Ponies and stuff when she was 4. And now she tells me all these things, right, that are happening in her life now that she's 15. But I love that idea of like set the tone, like just think about it when they're young. What do you want your relationship to be like?
Right. What do you value? And when you're mindful about that very early on, what are you emphasizing? What are your priorities in any given situation? What are you trying to convey to your daughters about what you think is really important? When you can do that when they're really young, you're establishing a foundation. Because when adolescence comes, just because of development, there's going to be conflict. You know,
Mhm.
of course, you always want to be close to your daughters, but I think that it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to get through the adolescent years without conflict. Because just by its very nature, moms are supposed to keep their kids healthy and safe, and teenagers are supposed to test the limits, and they're supposed to, flex their wings and, try to fly away a little bit. And so there's this push pull going on that's very normal and natural. And if you have a good relationship, if you have a good foundation of closeness and trust, and your daughter feels like you're an ally during those years, I think it's that much easier to weather those years without feeling like you've lost that closeness with your daughter, or that you've lost the communication that's so important during those years.
I love that idea they feel like you're an ally. I think that's really important to like, and especially sometimes when I think of like sort of the parenting metaphors that we all have, like the united front and pick your battles, right? Like we have all these like war metaphors for parenting. And I think those are really wrong-headed, in that we want to be on the same team, right? Like we want to be
Right.
allies. But I'm curious about you and like what drove you to write this, because I know that your first book is titled I'm Not Mad, I Just Hate You. So, which, your now adult daughter had to weather the popularity of a book titled I'm Not Just Mad, I Hate You. Um, and I love what you said also about like there will be conflict, like that's just normal, right? Like we're all going to have conflict. So, as as you went into this with your own daughter, and this conflict arose, what were some of the maybe fears or worries that you had to had to work through going into adolescence?
Sure. Well, I too had a very difficult relationship with my own mother. And
Mm,
so a lot of my fears were that my daughter would, well, let me just say how I felt. I
mhm,
felt that my mom could not tolerate any sort of expression of feeling on my part or a thought on my part that was different from hers.
mm,
She took great offense to anything that wasn't exactly what she thought, felt, or wanted. And so I felt like I couldn't really be myself and be authentic and genuine with her in a relationship. I had to kind of appease her and be very superficial, and we were never very close. And I wanted things to be different with my daughter right off the bat. And so, one of the things I was seeing in my practice was that the teenage girls I was seeing were very, very loath to express any kind of the slightest irritation, the slightest anger, the slightest negative, if you will, feeling, but they're perfectly normal human emotions, right? And then I was realizing that the reason they couldn't do that was because their moms couldn't do it either. Like so many of their moms were just so unraveled by the idea of conflict or anger. They didn't know how to handle it. And
mm,
so I was seeing that there was a better way and that we as moms could model for our daughters that it's okay to be upset with each other. That doesn't mean we don't love each other. And in fact, learning how to deal with conflict effectively was a way to keep our relationships intact. Because when one person expressed something and the other one really listened and really metabolized what was said, then we could work out things and find a better way. And so that's what I was determined to do with my daughter at every turn. And I really focused on how to say things in a way that didn't make her feel like she was a bad person or if she had bad feelings, that I
mm,
wasn't going to fall apart if she said to me, Mom, I don't like it when you do this.
mm, mhm.
It's just an
Well,
example.
this is relieving to hear because we have no problems expressing our irritation and things with each other in my family. Although my husband is a little bit conflict. It's funny, my husband, he's the one who's conflict avoidant, and and it's like it's okay for us to talk to each other, right? Like it's okay for people to have conflict. Like someone said, if you're not, and you have no conflict, you have no relationship. But also, right, and like, but also, it isn't it if you're not resolving things, if you're not talking through things. I mean, imagine other party or your child, they're making up a whole story about your motives and things and whatnot that may not be real, right? If you're
Oh,
not kind of
absolutely.
resolving these conflicts.
Absolutely. And every relationships aren't stagnant. Every relationship evolves over time, particularly during the adolescent years when your child is literally changing every few days, every few weeks, they're evolving so rapidly. The maturation that's going on here is unparalleled. So the relation, as your daughter evolves, the relationship has to evolve as well. And so if you're not dealing with things that arise, if you're not being flexible and adaptive, then your relationship is going to stagnate.
All right.
It's
All
just
right.
not going to
Cool.
work.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are the things that we should expect moving into adolescence for girls? What are some of the norms that we should expect? And maybe we can also talk about the way some things are different now than when they were when they're young. Because your new book is called "Anything But My Phone." I know how valuable the phone is, but what are some of the um, things we should expect developmentally?
You mean in terms of their psychosocial development?
Hmm.
Teens? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that is really important, and especially when you're talking about how moms react to it, one thing that's really important developmentally is that around puberty is when teenagers or preteens start to think about gravitating more toward their peers than hanging out with their
Hmm.
parents. And it's not 100% across the board, but that is the general developmental shift that happens at that time. And a lot of parents feel really threatened about that,
Mm.
particularly moms. Especially if you have been really a very engaged, very involved mom, and you spend a lot of time with your daughter, thinking about your daughter, and you love spending time with her. If you find that she's kind of not as interested in spending time with you and really more interested in her peers, sometimes moms feel really threatened about that and really insulted. And I think it's really important for parents to be aware of these developmental shifts that are perfectly normal. And honestly, it's a positive thing if your daughter has friends and wants to spend time with them.
Mm.
So that's one thing that I would say. And another one that also affects the mother daughter relationship is that this is a time when there's a tremendous amount of cognitive growth. And so daughters, when they get into early adolescence or even in the tween years, they're able cognitively to kind of question things, sort of meta analysis,
Mhm.
thinking about thinking. And so they're more apt to question parents, like, well, why can't I do something? Well, explain to me,
Mhm.
why are you saying no to this? And if mothers and fathers were raised in a home where that was absolutely forbidden, that it was seen as talking back or challenging authority, then they might reflexively respond like that to their own daughters. And I think that's really a mistake because we are trying to teach our daughters to be good problem solvers. So we want to share with them our thinking. We want them to see how we reason through things and how we make decisions. We want to encourage them to ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. I'm all for like questioning kids who question. It can be frustrating to live with sometimes, though.
Yes, yes. It's almost like the toddler stage where they're asking, why, why, and you're tired of answering, the same question, why. But things change, and you might say no for one reason one day, and then 2 weeks later, you might have to say no for a totally different reason.
Mhm.
And, it is tiring to go through those kinds of processes, I would say. It is tiring to have to sort of go through it. But I think that there's so much you gain from that. And if you shut off that process, not only will teens feel not heard and not understood, which is not a good thing, but also that's a part of their thinking process that won't develop in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, I think, like, if I were in a relationship, like, that would seem disrespectful if we're not gonna talk about, like, if we can't have a conversation of why. So, something is the way it is. So, I would offer that same respect to my kids to say, "This is why, maybe this is different at this point." Are there any pieces, other pieces kind of developmentally that we should look for in kids? So, we've talked about sort of that
The
orientation
social,
towards friends,
the cognitive.
cognitive development. Are there any
Um,
other pieces that we need to touch
Oh
on?
yeah, there's a lot. I'm trying to think about what would be the priority that I would talk about because there are so many things like that. Um, I think that there's a developmental thing that's going on with kids that affects parents, but indirectly, and
Mm,
that is around puberty. So around this age that I'm talking about is when kids get into the latter part of uh, middle school or junior high school and or start to go into high school. And that's a time when for many parents this whole frenzy about achievement starts.
mm,
They start to feel like, oh, your grades in this grade, well, in this year of your schooling are going to affect, what classes you're going to be in next year and whether you're going to be in honors classes, all this kind of anxious thinking.
mhm,
And I find that that can be a huge impediment to parent teen relationships because all of a sudden parents start getting anxious. And we should talk about parental anxiety in general. But parents start getting anxious and they start behaving differently toward kids' schooling. And they sometimes they get much more involved. And so teens start feeling this pressure. And it can also happen with extracurricular activities as well, because
Mhm.
that's the age when, you're doing it for fun, but if you find your niche
Mhm.
around age 11 or 12, like a lot of girls will just quit sports if they're not good at it. But parents might try to convince them to continue. They might try to ask kids to step it up and do a much more intense version of a sport or a hobby, because they think that they need to have their kids find this niche that's going to help them to achieve and get to college and all that stuff. And it starts really young. And I find that that is probably one of the number one factors that really erodes relationships between parents and young teens.
It's interesting as you talk about that because, like, for me, I've been my kids I've always been involved in Montessori schools. They didn't get grades until like 7th and 8th grade, and they do the work, follows the child, that, and it's child led. And
Yes.
and I've seen, seen the research about extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation,
Hmm. Hmm.
extrinsic motivation being things like praise, rewards, and grades, and how
Yes.
demotivating that is. I
Yes.
basically have evolved to this attitude of like that your grades are your thing. Like that's your thing. Like I have nothing to do
Hallelujah.
with it. I don't e-
That's great.
I
As it should
barely
be.
oh good. Because I barely, it's like they have to be like, Mom, I got my report card. Oh, okay. Do you want to show me? Like you don't have to, you can show me if you want. I almost don't even, and it's interesting because they have like almost like 100% ownership
Oh,
of their grades
as
and
it
their
should
thing.
be.
And they're so motivated. I mean, it's a
Yes.
sample size of 2, so I can't say that this is a thing, but they they are they get incredible grades, but I don't have I could not let, like, from their perspective, I imagine it's like, "Oh, that's great. I bet that feels good." It's completely their thing, and that seems to have
Right.
worked incredibly well for
And
them.
it does. It does. I mean, really, honestly, kids have a natural love of learning. And if they learn things on their own and they feel good about it, they feel empowered, parents don't have to do a thing, But the antithesis of that, and I'm very familiar with the Montessori method, and I think it's great. My children also were in Montessori schools very early on, but then they went to regular elementary school because it didn't go up, past
Mhm.
preschool. But I love that model. But the antithesis of this is what I'm seeing in middle school and especially in high school now, where parents have an online portal. And so they can
Yeah.
see every single day,
Mhm.
whether their kid was in class, what they got on that quiz, all of their homework assignments, their grades, if they didn't get anything in. And, it's taking the school ownership completely away from kids.
Mm.
And the reason I think, and this is something that I want to talk about a little bit, if it's okay,
Yeah.
is that I think that so much of the problem that comes in with parents and tweens and teens is that parents get anxious about things.
Mm.
This is a huge thing because I hear from the teens that I work with, whether it's social or academic or things like, being out in the world, whether it's drinking or drugs or driving, whatever it is. When parents are anxious, as you well know, and their amygdalas start firing away and they perceive a threat, then they're flooded with stress hormones. And what happens is that the way they speak to their kids completely changes. They're coming from this anxious place, but
Mhm.
it comes out angry. It comes out like they're mad at their kids. And their
Mhm.
kids perceive that as the anxiety as sort of anger and criticism. Their tone of voice changes.
Mm.
And I read a really interesting study that showed that around mid adolescence, at around 15 or so, girls are maximally sensitive to facial expressions in their moms,
Mm.
especially anger and anxiety.
Mm.
And so you're giving your kid this message that they're so, angry, anxious, whatever. And the kids are feeling so criticized and like, why is my mom angry at me? And it's coming out in a way that's so not helpful.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, when I've been worried about things, my girls have expressed to me like it's like you're mad at me. Like they've said that to me and I'm like I'm worried. We've had that conversation probably a couple times about some things like I'm worried about X and it's, oh, it feels like you're mad at me. That's really fascinating to have that.
It's wonderful that they
Yeah.
can express that to you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I believe me, the kids I see in my office, that is not easy for them to do. And I
Mhm.
don't know that their mothers would be that receptive because I don't think their mothers are aware of it.
Mm.
I don't
Mhm.
think the mothers are aware that they're coming across as angry or that their kids think they're coming across as angry.
Well, I
But,
think this could be a real light bulb for a lot of us, right? I think this is
yeah,
dear listener, like this is important information. Like our anxiety, our children may make up a story about that, about how you feel about them and how they are not good enough and they are not worthy. And like if I'm feeling constantly criticized, then that's definitely a lack of acceptance there, right? That they're experiencing, I guess.
for sure. And as I said, it can be something like social. I've had situations where, let's say a girl's in middle school and she's really struggling socially. And she tells her mom about that. And she tells her mom, what she's doing about it. And the mom can relate to this situation. I mean, who of
Maybe
us?
too much.
Right, exactly. Who hasn't been in middle school? If you've been a girl in middle school, you can relate to,
Oh God,
the
seventh
issues,
grade
right?
is the worst year
The
of my life.
worst,
Yes.
the worst. I was just going to say we all wanted to skip seventh grade. There should be no seventh grade for girls. The worst year. So, but you hear this and you become very anxious and you don't realize it, and then you respond to your daughter like, "What are you doing? Why are you letting these girls treat you like this?" And you speak like this, and your daughter is like, "What did I do wrong? Why are you yelling at me?
Mm,
Why, what,
mhm.
and the daughter ends up feeling like a disappointment. Like she's not only disappointed in her own social life, but now she feels like she's disappointing her mom. So not only is she upset about her own social situation, but now she's upset about upsetting her mom.
So I'm hearing from you, parents, we need to take care of our own anxiety. We need to learn to take care of our difficult feelings. We need to be able to process, regulate our feelings, bring ourselves back to our own sense of ease and calm. And that's one of the best gifts we can give to our kids. Dear listener, we've said that how many times on the podcast, right? But here it is from another angle. It's so amazing.
Right. I'm sure you have said it before.
Yeah.
But sometimes, hearing it in the context of situations can be so
Mhm.
helpful
Yeah, I
because
agree.
we've all sort of been there in those
Mhm.
situations. We want what's best for our daughters and we think that we're doing and we all do our best. But being aware of our own activation, being
Mhm.
aware of what our bodies feel like, when we have all these stress hormones flooding our brains, and being able to have the self discipline enough to realize it's happening and realize I don't have to act on this right now. You know,
Mm. Mhm.
we all have this feeling, or at least I did. I can speak for myself. So if I were upset about something that was going on, worried, whatever you want to call it, something that was going on in my kids' lives, I felt this sense of urgency to talk about it now.
Mhm.
I felt like I have to deal with this now. It's really upsetting me. And now is the best time. And I learned the hard way, I think, that if I'm feeling that way, oftentimes, no, it wasn't the best time.
It's the
In
wrong time
fact,
to talk about it.
it's the wrong time. Exactly. And that I needed to take a pause
Mm.
and process things myself and kind of do a little self uh, inquiry and think, okay, why am I so upset about this? What is it triggering for me? What am I really upset about? What do I really want to accomplish in this conversation with my kid? And boy, was that grounding. That was so helpful. Because then I
I,
didn't blurt out, the first thing that came to my head, which was not the best thing.
that reminds me of advice I heard on this podcast that I've mentioned a couple times that I think is so apropos, that Aaron Huey, director of the Fire Mountain Center for Troubled Kids who are dealing with addiction, suicide, etc. His top two, I said, how can we avoid our kids coming to your center, Aaron? And he said, it was like, take care of yourself and have other adults that you can process your stuff with, to talk to.
Yes.
Right. Like that was
Hmm.
what, like those, some of the top two things he said. It wasn't anything about the kids. It was like you taking care of yourself and process have places, have people to talk to process your things. So you're not coming to your kids as activated, just like you're saying, Roni. Like that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm, that's
And
incredible.
I think that podcasts have fulfilled such a need, because in my experience, as time has gone on over the decades, that I've been a psychologist in practice and interviewed people for my books and things, I've seen that it's harder and harder for parents to get that kind of support,
Mhm. Yeah.
because, when kids
Isolated.
are little, right, you're more isolated. That's one thing, and especially during the pandemic. But also, as your kids get older, you don't have as many opportunities. You're not volunteering in school that much anymore. You're not being the chaperone on the field trip, or chaperoning a dance. Your kid doesn't want you to do that kind of thing. You're not the class mother. Um, and then when your kids get into the adolescent years, you have this sense of not wanting to violate their trust. And so you don't want to talk about your kid with other
Mm.
people who might be in a position to judge them. But also, I think that there's, again, with this achievement frenzy, parents are loath to really acknowledge that they're having any issues with their kids,
Mm.
because they're so busy presenting this image of this perfect kid, and that is making every other mother feel like, oh, I'm the only one who's having this problem. I'm not getting any validation that this is a normal thing. You
Yeah.
look around and you see every other teenage girl seems to be so much more put together and is so polite. And, how come your daughter is the only one who's giving you the stink eye? And it's so not true. And I think podcasts have really brought that home to a lot of mothers.
Oh, good.
So
Yes.
thank you for the work that you're doing.
You're not alone, dear listener. But I want to go back. So kind of what I'm hearing from you, Ronnie, is like we need to back off a little, right? Like we need to kind of give them some space. We need to take care of our feelings. We need to let them value their friends. Like that's great. But I also understand that like in the teen years that you mentioned, like we, rather than pushing them, right, we maybe need to back off a little. But I also understand that like in the adolescent and teen years are a good time for things, structured things like sports, like
Yes.
activities. Like my girls are in scouts, like they're really into that, and I think that's great because, when you're little, you need all this unstructured play. You need to be able to make up your own rules. You need to have free time and things like that. And then your brain goes cuckoo bananas in adolescence and you need some structure, right? Like, is that true? I mean, because I think that's a helpful guide to think about how how much structure are you going to have in your kid's life? How are you going to encourage them or say, hey, at least you need to do one activity? Like, I don't care what it is, you choose it, but something like that. What would you say to that, Ronnie?
Absolutely correct. I think that it's very, very important for developmentally for kids to be in a structured kind of situation where there are guidelines, there are rules, where they're in a relationship with another adult who's an authority figure. They're in a situation with peers where they have to learn, even if they're not on a team sport, whether it's in scouts or even a class that they're doing together. But they learn how to share, they learn how to help each other. There are many, many things that can be learned from structured activities. But as you say, it's a very different thing when kids are allowed to choose their activity and follow their passion. That's a very, very important thing. And the other thing that I want to say, and I don't think that you were implying this, but I just want to clarify this.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, parents need to step back for sure. but we also need to be poised to step in when necessary.
Mm. Mhm.
And so I think that that is a really important message that we give kids, where we say to them, you know, you do your thing, you know, show me how responsible you are, show me what good judgment you have, show me, you know, that you're making these good decisions. And if you don't, I'm here to help you out. You know, that's what I'm here for. I will step in because you're going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. And I'm going to treat your mistakes not as a federal crime and, you know, punish you for the rest of your life, but I'm going to step in and help you to see where you went wrong and correct you so that in the future you'll make better decisions. And that's really important for kids too. Just as much as the freedom is knowing that there are guardrails there for them.
Mhm. Yeah, some structure, right? Some,
Yes,
yeah, the too much
some
freedom, right?
limits,
It's like
some
a
limits.
sense of, yeah, a sense of like, I don't care about you, right? Like that's kind of gives them that message. Like if there's too much freedom, it's like, where are the people holding the limits that show that they care about me? And yeah, I see.
You know, you're reminding me of a story from when I was probably pretty new in my practice. And of course, you know, 99% of the teenagers in my practice were complaining to me that their parents didn't give them enough freedom. And then I saw a girl who very tearfully told me that she had no rules. Her mother didn't know if she had dinner, didn't make her dinner, never asked about her schoolwork. Her mother was completely checked out. And I don't think I've ever had like to that point. I
Mhm.
have since then, but I had such a sense of sadness for this girl because she really felt like she wasn't even seen, like she wasn't even important.
Mm.
And it was very damaging for her.
So the middle path, it comes back to the middle path.
Yes,
Yes,
moderation. Yes,
moderation. Okay,
moderation.
but moderation, it's now we have some new challenges. So let's kind of go into some of those, right? Like, so
Okay.
today we have some new challenges. And
Yes.
sometimes I think of like, for me, one of the cardinal rules of parenting is like we model, right? Our modeling is like the best teaching, right? That we live
Of
what we want our
course.
kids to learn. But then there are a few things I feel like that where there's with boundaries and things like that, but I feel like there are two things where we need to like have stronger boundaries in some ways because their very nature is so different, like, and that's sugar and screen time, like, and technology, right? Like, because
The
there are these
addictions.
things, yeah, that can be like incredibly addictive, right, to the human
Yes.
body
Yes.
because of the way we evolved in a our brain is 100,000 years old and we live in
Right.
this very extremely different life that is really hard for our 100,000-year-old evolved brain to deal with, right?
Yes.
So,
Sure. And kids brains have not evolved. I mean, they have,
yeah,
but they're not fully developed. So you're dealing with underdeveloped brains or still immature brains, which is a whole other thing from adults.
yeah. And we've got things like TikTok now. I mean, it's like, which is like this super addictive thing. So, what are what do you recommend as far as dealing with technology? Maybe some guidelines that you could offer us for dealing with technology for adolescent girls in ways that keep them empowered but safe, and and learning. I mean, my learning how to deal with it. It's hard for adults to deal with this
It
technology.
is
So
hard for adults to deal with it. And
it's
I
hard.
might say that one of the reasons that I wrote this book is that I really feel for parents of teens right now. You know, my kids are so much older, and I know it would have been very difficult for me to go through this. And so I really wanted to help this generation of parents who are raising teens right now. And one of the things that I think is very important is to recognize that it's okay if you're feeling intimidated. You know, a lot of parents know that they didn't grow up with technology, but their daughters have. You know, they're digital natives. and they have this natural affinity and they have less anxiety about technology.
Mhm.
And so many parents feel so intimidated that they just want to bury their heads in the sand, which is not what I think that people should be doing.
Yeah,
So
because
I
then
like to, right,
they're
that's a
they're gonna run
disaster.
wild, right? We have to kind of
That's a
stay
disaster.
almost like the you were saying before, like we have to be available and kind of tuned in, but that middle path, not like totally hovering and controlling, right?
So
Okay.
here's how that would look with the technology world. First of all, what I said before about being allies, I think that's really especially important because
Mhm.
so many parents think, "Oh, technology, it's the devil." No, that's not the right attitude. I have seen so many examples of how technology is really beneficial to kids and how it really helps them to feel connected and to grow and to exercise creativity and to become entrepreneurs. So there's all of those good things. But our
Yeah, I've
job,
seen
like
some
with
good
everything
things too,
else, right?
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So our job is to help keep them safe. And so long before your kids actually get their first piece of technology, which I think you should delay as long as humanly possible because you're giving their brains a chance to grow and develop more. But before you do that, you have to establish that you are not the expert because you're not the expert on every social media app that's invented now or that's going to crop up in 2 months. But you are the expert on your daughter. You are the expert on what her skills are, where she has her strengths, where she has her weaknesses. And you are going to sit down with her together and talk about technology. You're going to teach her as much as you can, and you are going to ask her things in response. And so you're going to learn from each other. This is a collaborative relationship, a partnership, if you will. Now, obviously, you're the parent, so you have that say so. It's not a democracy. But what I mean by that is, so for example, with social media, we don't know the social culture that kids have at every different grade level or with their community. So we can't make assumptions. So sitting down with your daughter, for example, and asking her, what is her idea of a good post? What makes
Mm.
a social media post good? What makes it authentic? What are a turn off for her? Among her peers, there's sort of an unspoken kind of set of rules. What does she think is inappropriate? And you start off little by little, kind of discussing this with her, giving her your feedback and conveying your values. And you're going to say to her, this is something we're going to learn together. And until I know that you are really skilled and older and making good judgment, I'm going to check in every now and then to make sure that you're safe, just as I will when you get your driver's license. I'm not going to give you the driver's license and have you go drive on a highway or in a snowstorm. Little by little, I'm going to let you drive independently and make sure you know how to keep yourself safe. So it's really, you put it in the context of all the other steps toward independence that you're going to be going through as you're raising her.
I love that. That makes so much sense. Like for some reason with technology, we tend to be like, okay, here it is, and and that's kind of nuts. We
It is.
and would you agree, like one thing I discovered recently with the technology is that we can use the technology to hold some of our boundaries, right? Like, because it gets really confusing. Like if so my 15-year-old has a smartphone and my 12-year-old doesn't have a phone, but my 15-year-old now likes to read books on her smartphone, right? She has a
Hmm.
black background, the words are in type. She has a book reading app. She does Duolingo on her smartphone. Like she's got her Scout app on her smartphone. Everything is there. So we have like, for instance, a boundary in our house where we have a screen-free Sunday.
Hmm.
And we don't know, like she's just looking at the phone. We don't know what she's doing. And she says that she's reading. But recently I discovered that I insert my phone can control her phone and block certain things for, and these were agreements we had made a long time ago. So I just made it formalized by blocking that thing so that I could step away from being like the enforcer of this thing and I could let the technology kind of be hold the boundary for me. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'll tell you, I
Okay.
have mixed feelings.
Okay.
I do have mixed feelings. I understand the reason that you want to do it because you
Mhm.
don't want to be the enforcer. You don't want to be in that position where you have to do that. And I get that. It's
Mhm.
exhausting. Um, there are a couple of reasons why part of me thinks that that's not a good idea. First of all, I think that what we're trying to do during this stage is to help our kids develop the self discipline
Mhm.
to say, no, I'm not supposed to do that, or no, that's not a good thing for me to do. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, as soon as they get to school, they're going to be, I don't know, watching something or shopping or online or, in the black hole of TikTok or whatever. They're not going to have those skills to kind of pull themselves back. And so it's very
Mm.
unlikely that kids are going to use those kind of parental controls or they're setting screen time kind of limits for themselves. They
Mhm.
don't do that. They have to be able to resist the temptation in the minute, and so it's helpful to teach them how to do that. The
Okay.
other reason is that when I interviewed kids for this book, I was shocked. I talked to 16 and 17-year-olds, and I talked to 11 and 12-year-olds, and it didn't matter the age. When I asked them about parental controls, they laughed at me.
Oh,
They
no.
know how to get around them better
Yeah.
than computer engineers, literally better than they have, and I actually wrote some of these in the book, the ones that
Mhm.
they told me about. They told me about all kinds of clever workarounds and how to, I mean, you can't even imagine. When I tell parents these things, their mouths drop open. They have no, or parents tell me, I don't know how my kid got in my phone. I changed my password. I said, well, did they create another, ID? Oh, yes, that's what they did. Um, you know, um, so it
Oh.
gives you a false sense of security,
Okay, yeah.
and I don't like that. I don't like that idea at all. So I
No,
think it's
actually, my
better.
daughters told me about a workaround that
Oh,
we
they
had.
did?
Yeah, because my husband set it up so, like, the Wi-Fi turns off
Turns
YouTube.
off at a certain hour.
At a like, the Wi-Fi cuts off YouTube at a certain hour, and
Right.
I had, mistakenly, like, signed up to do, like, a 7 p.m. book talk for Raising Good Humans, and then I got there at 7 p.m., and it was, like, I didn't even realize it was 7 p.m. on the West Coast, which was, like, 10 p.m. So, anyway, I was already exhausted. I had to stay up till 10 p.m.
Oh my
because I
gosh.
didn't want to make these people disappoint all
Yeah.
these people who had signed up for this thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm just so tired. I'm just watch some YouTube on my phone or whatever. And I couldn't do it because it was like, and my daughters were like, Mom, it's super easy. You just put your phone
Yes.
on
Pacific
cellular
time.
rather than like Wi-Fi.
Oh, that.
It's like,
Oh, okay.
oh,
Putting your
duh.
phone on cellular is one way. Also, changing the time zone is another way. Yeah, there are
Of
lots of ways.
course they know
So,
about it. Okay,
of
so
course they
better
know
for
about it, and they're
them to
much
really
smarter than we
understand
are.
the value. I mean, so and part of me feels like okay, we've had the screen-free Sunday forever. Sometimes they hate it. Most of the time now that but like what we see is like their most creative work comes out of screen-free Sunday. They're like
Of
painting,
course.
they're doing all these like great things. And
Of
so
course.
and we like having this sort of Sabbath. Is it something that I should maybe at this point like um try to like kind of express the value of, but not be so much of enforcer of? I don't know. What do you think, Ronnie?
Well, I think that it's important to offer kids an alternative. You know, I think that it's better to demonstrate things and to have them
Mhm,
experience things than to kind of talk them into it or moralize and that kind of
mhm,
thing. So I'm a big believer in screen free time, and I think it's good for adults. I mean, I know it's good for
mhm.
adults as well as for kids. So I love when parents have, well, first of all, dinner time, there should be no phones.
Yeah.
Family time, I think there should be no phones. Like if you're, having a movie night or you're having people over, no phones. Um, but I think that what you're describing, I love the idea of, a screen-free Sabbath. then it should be fun. You should plan to do things that are fun for the whole family.
Mm,
And so you're demonstrating to kids, yeah, they might have missed their phones. They might feel out of touch with their peers, or they might not be able to read on their e-reader. But you know what? They're also having fun doing non-screen activities. And
mm,
it's so important for them to experience that and to be aware that that's possible.
mhm.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
they
I
think
mean,
that their screens are their lives.
I know. I know it's scary because it's so easy, right? It's such
Very
easy
easy.
way to get those dopamine hits, and it's so much easier than reaching out to a friend and connecting and real life. I mean, I'm amazed how little I see that teenagers in like the community, which is pretty connected where I live, r- reaching out to each other and seeing each other in real life. I mean, it probably is leftover from the pandemic, but it's just kind of amazing, I think.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because with the pandemic, what happened was that teens were so used to talking, through technology. And then when they couldn't see their peers in school, they started craving that face-to-face contact. I
Mm,
was seeing such an increase in kids who were saying, I just want to hug my friends. I just want to be with my
mm,
friends, which I thought good. I mean, it's silver lining of the pandemic that it's sort of human nature to want something that you can't have, right? So all of
mm,
a sudden they wanted that again. But I was just doing a wellness day with middle schoolers. And what I was hearing from them is that their people skills are super rusty
yeah.
and they are feeling awkward about being in person with people. They're saying, well, what if we have nothing to talk about? What if we have nothing to say? They're telling me that they're whipping out their phones if there's an awkward moment because, what else are they going to do? They're showing their peers something. Their people skills are terrible. They're having panic attacks if their mother asks them to pop in the post office and get some stamps. Um, they can't order in a restaurant. I'm hearing from parents. They just can't look at people in the eye. So they're having this reentry problem,
Mm,
a lot of anxiety. So I love the fact that parents are able to now do things as a family and maybe do things with family friends, which
mm,
is usually less anxiety provoking for kids
mhm,
because they're usually kids that they've grown up with and they're not going to
mhm,
school with.
mm.
So there's less pressure.
So we could kind of
And
ease them back into,
yes,
this is how you are with other people in
exactly.
person. Oh. Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Ronnie, there's so many things we could talk about. I can't believe how quickly
Yes.
we came up against our
Oh my gosh. Yes.
time. Ronnie's new book is Anything But My Phone, Mom. Can be found anywhere books are sold. And where can people reach out and talk to you if they have more questions or want to connect?
Well, there's a lot of information available on my website, which is ronicohensandler.com. It's RoniCohenSandler.com. And they can also reach me on Facebook, Dr. Roni Cohen Sandler, and Twitter, Dr. Ronnie CS. I also have a newsletter, which they can sign up for on my website. But I have a lot of information on my website for parents about all different sorts of things, all different sorts of topics. And they can also ask questions of me there. So I'm happy to hear from all of your listeners.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time, for doing this work, for writing your books and sharing your wisdom with us. It's selfishly, it's been very helpful for me to think about my teen girls.
That
And
makes me
I'm,
feel good.
yes, yes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming.
Anytime. I loved it. Thank you.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Janla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.